Imagine you've just exited your car, and as you exit the driver's side, you look up at a random window in a building which is right opposite you. And you suddenly see that an elderly gentleman is being beaten by two thugs. Well, you being a decent person, of course, run in to rescue this man. And while you're at it, you also see that there are two guards by the side of this building, so you engage them as well. So the three of you rush into this apartment and you bang on this particular door to rescue this elderly gentleman. But as you bang on the door, you don't hear anything on the other side. Well, what do? You call the police and you're absolutely sure the perpetrators are inside, so you lock the perpetrators in with the victims. However, by the time the police arrives, it seems there's no rescuing this elderly man and that he has been beaten to death by these two thugs and they seem to have escaped from the window. Well, the next day you hear that the man who was beaten to death and the man that you so desperately wanted to rescue was in fact the father of a Bollywood actor. And then a few days after that, you hear that the person who seemed to have perpetrated this whole crime had not just perpetrated one, but four other murders. And she was a Bollywood actress. If this story sounds too good to be true, well, it's not. Today, I'll tell you the story of a wannabe Bollywood actress, a B grade Bollywood actress, who, along with her boyfriend, killed no less than four people. If this story sounds too good to be true, well, it's not. And today, I'll tell you the story of not just this particular victim, but four others who were victimized by a B grade Bollywood actress and her boyfriend, and together both of them are alleged to have killed at least four people. Hi, welcome to Collectively Vigilant. My name is Dr. D. If you're new here, please consider subscribing to this channel because not only will I give you the legal aspects of this case, of course, I'll also give you the criminological analysis. Now, if you've been tuning in for a while, you know that we are also available in a podcast form. But the podcast, unfortunately or fortunately, is not identical to what you're listening to right now. It's actually very different because I host that with the psychologist Sam, where she gives her psychological insights, and of course, I give my legal and criminological insights. And I feel very confident that I can tell you the story because not only am I a professor, I'm also a lawyer. Okay, so let's start with the story. Let's start this case with the woman who allegedly masterminded not just one but four of these deaths. Let's start with the femme fatale. The woman in question is a woman called Simran Sood, who, by the way, was not born as Simran Sood, but was actually born as Sema Surinder Kumar Dusange in Ludhiana, Punjab in the 1970s. Her father was the head of the Department of Geography, according to one particular newspaper, but there was another book that I read later that said that he was in the Department of Agriculture. Well, nonetheless, we know for sure that he was at least a professor. And just like her father was a scholar, so was her mother. Her mother was actually a school principal. And again, according to one of the newspapers that I checked, it said that her mother was a professor of chemistry and was later on a teacher in Arya College. She was also the sister to two other siblings, a brother and a sister, and all three of these students were very academically focused thanks to their parents. All three of them, the parents were pushing for all three of them to be academic scholars. While it seems that the two other siblings seems to have fulfilled their parents' lifelong wish of becoming professors later in life, however, Seema herself seems to have taken a different path. As a teenager, Simran or Seema Surinder Kumar Dosanjh became a well known figure amongst all the young women in Punjab thanks to her beauty. She was constantly participating in lots of fashion shows, which in the 90s were organized by different glamour magazines. She was always featured in either a small one or a big magazine, somewhere or the other. And this gave her a boost to want to be in Bollywood someday. While in college, she aspired again, like many women around her, not only to be a model, but also to be an actor. However, her parents, as you can tell, were not very happy about this decision, and it seems that she was constantly rebelling against her scholarly parents. Nonetheless, with all this push and pull of the family, she did complete her university in the year 1995. However, not the kind of person who would take no as an answer. She basically threatened to run away from her home several times. Now, all the information that I'm giving you here is not just from newspapers, but actually, there's a trilogy which has been written about this particular case by the son of one of the victims in this case. So I'm also referring to that book, and that book basically claimed that Surendra Kumar Dusange was actually a really good singer when she was a child. And not only did she want to be a model and actress, she even wanted to be a singer. And what she ended up doing to fulfill this dream is she began singing in the troupe of the famous devotional singer Anup Jalota. And thanks to that troupe, she was basically given the opportunity to come to Mumbai a few times, and that's where she was basically singing as a background singer in the troupe of Anup Jalota. Now, by the way, this book also goes on to assert that while she was singing in this troupe, Sema was constantly under pressure to sleep with the singer Anup Jalota. And although there is no way for me to fact check these claims, but it does seem to me, when I looked into other stories around Anup Jalota, that there are several other cases where stories have been outed about this man's outrageous behavior, something that we see all the time, where these kind of men have public piety and of course private perversity. So, in fact, there's another actress, a Bollywood actress by the name of Jasleen Matharu, who also happens to be from Punjab. He seems to have a type. And this woman was featured along with Anoop Jalota in Big Boss 12. And for all of you people who are not familiar with Big Boss, it's basically a version of Big Brother. And not only did the actress Jasleen allege that Anoop Jalota had forced her to sleep with him, there's another Israeli actress who wanted to become a Bollywood actor, and she has done her fair share of item numbers. She also alleged that Anoop Jalota had forcefully made sexual contact with her without her consent. So, although I cannot fact check what the book says about Simran Surinder Kumar Dosanjh, or Simran Sood as we know her, but it does seem like this man does have a bit of a reputation. No matter which source we look at, it is confirmed that initially Simran Sood made her way to New Delhi, and after that she quickly made a beeline for Mumbai. Somewhere in the late 1990s, her parents were extremely worried about her, and they didn't like the fact that she was, wanting to make it as an actress. And of course, you cannot fault the parents for something like this, because it is completely understandable that parents would want their children to have a stable life, a life away from the vagaries of and the unpredictability that life throws at one, right? So when they knew that their girl is going to start working in Mumbai, of course they were genuinely worried about her. Her family, of course, also said something like, girls from good families do not become actresses, which, from their point of view, is a completely understandable thing. However, Simran was a strong, strong young girl, and what she said was she's going to go anyway. And despite her parents' disapproval, she makes it to Mumbai. She landed in Mumbai, and she quickly realized that she was not the only pretty face. And she also realized that her beauty alone would not be enough for her to break into Bollywood just so easily. Once she reaches Mumbai, she even changes her name from Seema Surinder Kumar Dushansh to something which sounds a little more modern to the producers who she's auditioning for. And that's when she starts calling herself Simran. That's because that was her nickname. And the family name Sood was somewhere in her extended family. So she just adopts that. While she's still trying to establish herself in Mumbai, she would frequently go to a particular restaurant which is called the Copper Chimney restaurant, which was quite an establishment in the 1980s, 1990s, and is actually a restaurant found in many parts of the world even today. This is the exact place where she ends up meeting an interesting man who was, for that particular night, not only her waiter slash concierge slash the manager of the restaurant. And she ends up meeting this person not just once, not just twice, and he starts to chat her up. Of course, this was a beautiful woman sitting in a high flying restaurant all by herself. and they start to like each other little by little. And this man in question was a man by the name of Vijay Palande. Very soon after meeting this man, they're spending so much time with each other that basically they're already a couple. He helps her move into an apartment. He is trying to help her to the best of his ability. And they, of course, goes without saying, fall in love with each other. And what do you think Seema's scholarly parents would think about that? Of course, they wouldn't like it, right? So her parents completely disapproved of this match, but Simran, being Simran, really liked the fact that just like herself, Vijay was also a hustler at heart. And I think it's actually very admirable for people to be hustlers. There's so many of us who have side gigs and yet another side gigs, and that's the kind of person that Vijay was, and Simran really, really liked that. Now, what do I mean when I say that he had several different side hustles? It seems like this man was also working for an underworld don. It seems like Vijay was also some sort of a property dealer, and he had his fingers in every single pot that you can think of, ladies and gentlemen. So, with the money that she was earning herself and with a little bit of help that Vijay was giving her, Simran started to invest in herself, which I think all of us would agree is a brilliant thing to do. She started investing in her looks, of course, because she wanted to be a Bollywood actress. So in 1997, she went to the US for some plastic surgery. And after that, made many other subsequent visits where she tried to upgrade her looks. Simran had several plastic surgeries, so much so that after one point she was completely unrecognizable to the people around her. She went to US, she went to Mumbai, she went to Dubai, she went to all sorts of places, and she was quickly becoming very accustomed to this life of luxury and this life of riches. And despite the objections of her parents, Simran decides to marry Vijay. However, what Simran didn't know is that she was being played all along. Vijay, in fact, wasn't as rich as Simran thought he was. He was a man with several different aliases and had several underground connections. Vijay Palande first came to Mumbai as a grade 9 student from his native place in Chiplun district in Maharashtra in the mid 1980s. Most of his family is still settled in the Mumbai's western suburbs, and he was a moderately bright student who wanted to study hotel management, and he nursed a dream of someday opening his own restaurant in Mumbai. And he studied hospitality and then quickly started working at the Copper Chimney restaurant, exactly the place where he ends up meeting not only Simran but several other well established people who would come to this restaurant time and time again because in the 1990s this was the place to be. Vijay Palande was apparently such a charming fellow that not only did he smooth talk many men, he also smooth talked several different women, including a German woman by the name of Levi Braganza. And at some point, he was in a relationship with her. Well, it's not really known when Vijay started working for the gangster Sintosh Shetty, but at some point he did. And when Vijay realizes that Simran too was getting accustomed to this life of luxury and these expensive surgeries that she wanted to upgrade herself, her looks, her voice, everything. Then that's when he proposes to her that together they should join forces and do what's commonly known as a honey trap. Now, both of these people, then Vijay and Simran, began to target the rich people who would come to the Copper Chimney restaurant just to have dinner or to have lunch. But that's where this slowly began. And you know what? I'm inclined to believe that, Vijay and Simran, of course, find each other because not so much out of love, but because of their mutual aspirations for money and fame, and little less, maybe a little bit of love, maybe, but mostly their ambition. So, the tragedy that's going to unfold in the lives of four different families basically started to unfold almost immediately after Simran and Vijay get married in Faridabad near New Delhi in the year 1998. Their crime spree begins almost immediately after they get married. So not only was Vijay Palande by the time these people get married already work, not only did he already work for a Don, he was also doing all sorts of other shady things like importing and exporting things. I'm not sure if that was at the behest of the Don, but he was definitely under the police radar several times for doing illegal things. So let me start with the first round of murders that this duo embarked upon in the 1990s. Remember how I told you that Vijay Palande had worked at the Copper Chimney restaurant? By the time it's 1998, he's almost working there for almost 8 years, and less of a waiter, more of a concierge kind of service where he really grew very, very close to the regular customers. And this restaurant was one of the places to be in Mumbai in the 1990s, and regularly witnessed all sorts of fancy people walking in with fancy cars and shelling out lots of money. This is where Vijay the concierge introduced Simran Sood to an Air India engineer by the name of Anup Das. And when Vijay introduces Simran, he of course forgets to mention that Simran is his wife and goes on to say, "Meet Simran, she's my sister." As I said, after some time, Vijay basically became so close to Anup Das, and thanks to that, Anup Das became quite close to Simran Sood. And as per the plan that Simran Sood and Vijay Palande had hatched, Simran started getting really close to Anup Das. She used to visit Anup's house very often. She met all the members of Anup's family, including his father and Anup's sister as well. Vijay, in fact, had known Anup since 1992, and by this time it's already 1998. So, this man, it's reasonable to say, basically trusted Vijay, and he was basically overwhelmed by Vijay's charisma. He's known to be a smooth talker, and he was able to disarm not only Anup but his entire family. One day, Simran tells Anup that she has absolutely no place to live in Mumbai, and for the sake of friendship, Anup gives her his Juhu apartment to live in. Simran and Vijay then plan to extort money from Anup by overtaking this apartment. By the way, just as a side note, this is really sad because if you've read even a single headline in the last 30 years about the judicial system of India, you would know that there are so many cases which are jam packed in the Indian judicial system that something like a property dispute does not even come up in the Indian courts very often, and when it does, it can take up to 2 to 3 decades for it to resolve. So, there's absolutely no reason to harm someone over a piece of property, basically, because by the time it will get resolved in the court, chances are you might not be around, maybe your children will be around if you're lucky. Anyway, let's get back to the story. Now, both of these people, Simran and Vijay, of course, move into this Juhu apartment and completely overtake the apartment within a few days and then refuse to pay any rent, obviously, right? And Anup by this time is getting really frustrated that he's not getting any rent from this apartment, and he doesn't know if he's ever even going to get his apartment back. And he's constantly calling Vijay, he's constantly calling Simran, and to no avail. On the 26th of January of 1996, Simran and Vijay call up Anup and tell him that, well, why don't we go for a business meeting in Mahabaleshwar? And after Anup leaves with Vijay for this business meeting, his family never hears from him ever again. After a few days, when they're constantly calling Vijay asking about the whereabouts of their son Anup, Anup's father, Swaraj Ranjan, became so concerned that he tracked down Vijay and came to meet him himself. Unfortunately, as consumers of true crime, you know exactly where this is going. When Swaraj Ranjan goes to meet his son, Vijay and Simran, of course, sedate this man and murder him. Not only do they murder him, they scatter his body all over the Kumbhali Valley in Maharashtra. And in the meantime, the rest of the family that's left is just Anup's mother and Anup's sister, who by this time was already married and living in some other part of India. these two women are getting increasingly worried about the father and the son, and that's when they register a missing persons report in the police station. Now, let me give you a tidbit of information that's actually going to be really important in solving this case. It seems that Swaraj Ranjan, when he was when he had already been sedated and he was being forced by Vijay and Simran to sign on the property papers so that they could be given the power of attorney. Well, it seems that even though he knew that he was on his deathbed, he refused to do that. He refused to sign, and I'm sure by the time he died, he already knew what had happened to his son and what kind of fate had befallen his son Anup, and probably he knew that within a few minutes he would face exactly the same fate. So, of course, as I said, Anoop's mom and Anoop's sister are increasingly worried, and they, of course, go to the police station. The nearest police station was DN Nagar police station, and on February 27 of 1998, they get a complaint not only for a missing person, but they also file a complaint for kidnapping against Vijay Palande. And on the suspicion of these charges, of course, Vijay Palande, thankfully, was arrested by the police. But, of course, as is everyone's right, he was immediately given bail as well. A few days later, Anoop's body was found in the valley where he had been dumped, and his father Swaraj Ranjan's body was found in Satara. Although Vijay had already taken bail by the time the two bodies were discovered, they go back and arrest this man on 18th of August of 1998. The police, of course, this time also add a charge not only of kidnapping but also of murder and dismemberment against Vijay Palande. In 1998, again, he is not only charged with the double murder of the Air India engineer Anup Das and his father Swaraj Ranjan Das. So, not only does he get charged, he in fact gets convicted in the court of law for these crimes, and he's sentenced to life. Now, all the reports that I read about this case were not very clear about this, but somehow this man ended up getting a parole after that. For the life of me, I can't figure out how that happened. I'm sorry, the newspaper reports just don't report on this particular fact. I don't know how this happened. I wish I did. But imagine this man who had already been convicted is out on bail, and what do you think happens next? Of course, this man somehow ends up getting fake documents and a fake passport, and he escapes the country by calling himself Kanubhai Patel. He procures a Indian passport and flies away to Bangkok. And he flew away, by the way, sometime, according to some newspaper reports, in late 1998 after he was convicted. And the next time we hear of Vijay Palande is the year 2002. Vijay, in fact, had gone missing, as I said, and had taken a fake passport and had initially moved away from India to Bangkok. And while he was there, just like his wife slash girlfriend, Simran Sood, he too underwent several plastic surgeries. He completely changed the way he looked, and he transformed his face completely. And guess what? He comes into India and leaves India several times within the year 1998 and the year 2002. And the police are, of course, not any wiser, because he does not look like Vijay Palande, and his passport says that he's a man by the name of Kanubhai Patel. Now, we're wondering, while her man is away, what is Simran up to? Of course, right? While Vijay was away, Simran Sood, of course, got on with her life, and she became quite the page 3 person. As a matter of fact, most of the pictures that I'm going to put in this video are from her page 3 photos, which were very, very common in the 2000s, in the early noughts, very common in all Indian newspapers. And with the help of all the links that she had established by modeling, by taking all sorts of acting jobs, she in fact was able to get a small role in a 2003 movie by the name of Anokha Anubhav, which has been explained as a sinister tale of forbidden love. It's very much softcore, you know what, and it's that kind of a movie. So not the greatest acting role, but you know what, she was keeping herself employed. The first time she actually appears in somewhat of a prominent role was along with Mohan Joshi, Razak Khan, and Divya Dwivedi in another small budget film. However, this of course did not do any wonders for her career, as you can tell. And if many newspaper reports are to be believed, Simran Sood actually invested her own money in some of these movies. And one of those movies you might just remember if you were around in the early 2000s was a movie called Smile Please. So not only is Simran Sood getting on with her career as a model in commercials, in all sorts of print jobs, in all sorts of small time movie roles. She's, remember, was also a singer, so she's doing a bit of that as well. So she's keeping herself afloat, and her husband comes in and out of the country with his plastic surgery face, and both of them meet quite often. And Vijay Palande again enters her life, according to some news sources, back in the year 2006. And once he is completely back and he knows that he will no longer be recognized in any shape or form or arrested by the police, he of course makes a beeline for the love of his life, Simran, and they both start living together. Interestingly enough, once he does return in 2006, he is actually arrested by the police when they discover a, and they arrest him for his fake passport, and they arrest him for cheating and forgery. But of course these are civil matters, and he was taken into the court, and his lawyer was able to get him out on bail. But at one point the police did put him back in the Kolhapur jail, where he did spend some time. And again, he was somehow, this person has 9 lives, okay, somehow he comes out in the year 2009. By the way, this is the part which sounds so much like a Bollywood movie, where in 2009, as his lawyer is petitioning that he should be he should be released from the prison, the lawyer says that my client has been in jail for 9 years, and you and I know that he was not in jail for 9 years. He had in fact fled the country. And then the lawyer says, well, there's a mix up in his identity. I don't know who you're talking about. My guy has been here all along. Anyway, this kind of stuff only happens in our country. If this sounds like a magic realist movie or a magic realist novel, well, it is. So thanks to this kind of legal maneuvering, of course, Vijay Palande is again released in 2009. And then he, of course, starts shacking back with his girlfriend slash wife, Simran, and they're living there. And by the way, the reason why I keep calling her the, apparently, according to some newspaper sources, Vijay Palande at this point was already married to another woman called Levi Braganza, or someone else. We're not very sure because different newspapers say different things. So we're not even sure if he was being monogamous to her. Maybe it was bigamy and he had already married someone else. We're not sure. All sorts of things are happening in this case. By this time, which is 2009, Simran Sood was actually put herself in the best position she possibly could in her whole life. And she was by this time dating a very prominent stockbroker by the name of Gautam Vora, who at one point was basically in the news a lot because he was dating the super model Viveka Babajee. And while Simran is dating Gautam Vora, the stockbroker, she's also dating another guy who was a small time Bollywood actor by the name of Anuj Tikku. Now, the interesting thing is that when she's dating Gautam Vora, he was in the news a lot, not only for being a page 3 person and being a very eligible, handsome, very rich bachelor. He was actually called into the police station several times because his ex-girlfriend Viveka Babajee had apparently harmed herself, and in her death note she apparently said, quote, "You killed me, Gautam Vora," unquote. And she was found hanging in her apartment on the 25th of June of 2010 in the Bandra area of Mumbai. So there are several sort of criminal overlaps in this case. It's very, very interesting. However, when the police looked into this whole situation, they came to the conclusion that the supermodel Viveka Babajee had in fact harmed herself because she was extremely depressed. So remember, by this time, Simran is already married to Vijay and is, of course, dating the stockbroker and also dating the small time Bollywood actor that I told you about. And it's in fact that small time Bollywood actor that you might just have actually seen in a movie called Rab De Banadi Jodi. And he was a slightly portly, older looking actor who appears in this movie for a short period of time. And Simran was in fact dating that actor. And it was so because Simran knew that Anuj Tikku actually came from a very well established family. Anuj, the Bollywood actor, came from quite a well established family. His father, Anuj's father, Arun Tikku, was a successful businessman worth millions and millions and who owned several apartments in several upscale locations in Mumbai. Although originally his family hailed from New Delhi, he was, of course, rich enough that his parents had sent him to study in the UK, and this Bollywood actor actually studied at the University of Lancaster. Before he started acting, he already had a master's in business administration. Because the son was so in love with Simran Sood, he gave her one of the apartments to live in. And when the father came to know that the son had just given one of the apartments to Simran Sood, he was extremely enraged and he took matters into his own hands. So Arun Tikku, the father, was enraged when he learned that his son Anuj Tikku, the Bollywood actor, had leased out the three apartments that the father owned in the Samarth Angan apartment building in Andheri West. One day he takes matters into his own hands. He arrives in Mumbai himself and he basically realizes that the flat by this time had already been leased out for 2 years, not in the name of Simran Sood, but actually in the name of a German woman called Levi Braganza and another man by the name of Vijay Palande, and yet another man. And the only deposit that had ever come in for this particular apartment was just in total 5 lakh rupees and 1 month's rent, which was 30,000, which was way below the market price for this particular location in Mumbai. So Arun Tikku was this robust elderly gentleman. He comes in and he literally single-handedly throws out a man by the name of Dhananjay Shinde from one of the apartments. However, when Anuj Tikku, the son, hears that his father had done that, he actually came to blows with his father and he started to speak up to his father and say, well, you have no right to throw my friends out of this property. And the neighbors around this time reported to the police and said the following quotation. Quote, he had a showdown with his father, after which he left the place in a huff, unquote. And this brings us to the story that I began with, that on the Saturday evening of April 7 of 2012, a particular person was basically parking his car in the Oshiwara area of Mumbai, and he is parking this in the parking lot and he looks up and he sees that an elderly gentleman is being beaten by two thugs in a window, and he runs in to help this elderly gentleman. By the time he, of course, gets there, unfortunately, this elderly gentleman had been beaten to a pulp and the door was locked from the inside. So despite the many efforts being put by this good Samaritan to open the door, of course it doesn't happen. And what happens next is, if because he couldn't get this door to open, what the good Samaritan does is he actually locks the door from outside. However, by the time the police arrive, the two thugs have, of course, fled the building from the window, and then they find the dead body of the elderly gentleman who was the father of the Bollywood actor. Not only was this elderly gentleman, who was 67 years old, not only was he badly beaten, he was in fact stabbed 3 different times all over his body. And actually, when the police start looking into this case, they don't think it's got anything to do with a man called Vijay Palande. What they actually think has happened here is they think that his own son, the Bollywood actor who was fighting with him the day before, must be the one who has killed his own father. Well, make this suspicion very known. When the police start investigating the case, the first person they show interest in is the son of the deceased, a man by the name of Anuj Tikku. And as the news of this suspicion began to be released all over India, that this man who might have killed his father is a minor Bollywood actor. This gained traction all over the media, and he was in fact interrogated by the police in connection to the murder of his father. And that's when he tells them, "Well, I had nothing to do with my father's killing. I had, of course, given this apartment over to my girlfriend Simran Sood and her brother Vijay Palande, and they're the ones occupying this apartment." He directs them towards Simran and Vijay, and that's when the police actually hone in on these two. Otherwise, they were thinking that the son had killed the father. But at this time, what the police didn't know and nobody else did was, before they had killed Anuj Tikku, the elderly 67-year-old gentleman, Simran and Vijay had actually in fact killed one more person. The police didn't know that before the killing of Arun Tikku, the elderly 67-year-old gentleman who had come to free his apartment from these people who had squatted there, Simran and Vijay had in fact conned yet another man into taking over his property and taking over his material possessions. And that man was a, a young man by the name of Karan Kumar Kakad, who was 28 years old and who was basically a rich gentleman. And I put the word rich in quotations because you hear about this and you'd know how rich he was. A rich businessman who had actually come from New Delhi to Mumbai because he harbored this dream of being a Bollywood producer. And guess where he was living? He was actually living quite close to Simran Sood, and he happened to attend the same gym as Simran Sood. Once Simran Sood realizes that this 28-year-old young strapping man is constantly flaunting money and has this nice BMW car, she of course makes a beeline for this man because that's the kind of victim she likes. She likes taking over these kind of men who are gullible, and she can just take over their properties. Once, of course, Simran gets to know that there is this rich person by the name of Karan Kumar Kakad who is in the vicinity, she lets her husband know that I've zeroed in on another prey. And of course, then Vijay gets really close to this man by the name of Karan Kumar Kakad. So Vijay thought that the apartment that Karan Kumar Kakad was renting in the Oberoi Springfields in Andheri West would be a place that they would like to overtake. Now, the sad thing about this whole situation is that Karan Kumar Kakad was actually, in fact, from quite a humble background in Delhi. He was just pretending to be rich. He was faking it until he could make it. He would wear lots of gold chains. He would flaunt an old BMW he was able to get thanks to his brother who helped him to get this car. Of course, both of them were only doing this so that Karan Kakad would in fact be getting some opportunities in Bollywood to hopefully fund a movie, become a producer. That was his lifelong dream. But of course, because he was flaunting all this wealth, Simran could smell money and she could see that this was one man that she could con. And unfortunately, in that sense, Karan Kumar Kakad becomes a victim of his own success, which he didn't really even have. Now, all this the police get to know once they actually arrest Vijay Kumar Palande for the killing of the Bollywood actor's father. And that's when he actually confesses and tells the police, well, guess what? Killed another man a few days ago. His name was Karan Kumar Kakad. And that's how the police got to know that Simran and Vijay were in fact involved in that killing as well. Now, once Vijay actually gets arrested by the police, he even goes on to say that Karan Kumar Kakad had actually in fact asked Simran for money, and she had given him money at some point, and he had not returned that money. So this really angered Vijay Palande, and that was also one of the reasons why he goes on to kill Karan Kakad. And of course, the way they kill Karan Kakad is quite familiar to us because we already know what they did to the father and son in 1998. They basically kill Karan Kakad and they scatter his body parts in different plastic bags all over the Mumbai-Pune expressway. And then, of course, they take over. Vijay and Simran, of course, take over Karan Kakkar's BMW. And of course, Karan Kakkar's family doesn't even know about all this because they live in Delhi. And once they cannot get in touch with him time and time again, they keep calling. And around March 6th of 2012, Karan Kakkar's brother Anish finally comes to Mumbai just so that he can register his case and look for his brother. So Anish Kakkad, the brother, and Rita Kakkad, the mother of Karan Kumar Kakkad, both come to Mumbai and they keep looking for him. They ask around, they cannot find him. They have no relatives in Mumbai as well. So what they end up doing is they of course beg the police to take this seriously, and then the police start finding all these body parts, and that's when they put two and two together, and thanks to the confession of Vijay Palande as well, they get to know that the body parts they had found earlier happened to be of Karan Kumar Kakkad. When the police start looking into the disappearance of Karan Kakkad, of course they had no idea that it had anything to do with Vijay and Simran until much later when Vijay tells the police that he was in fact the killer of Karan Kumar Kakkad. Initially, they actually traced Simran Sood because Simran Sood used to hang out a lot with Karan Kakkad. They were in the same gym. They were living in apartment buildings quite close to each other. She was actually seen with him quite a few times. And when they question her, cool as a cucumber, she says she has no idea who this person is and she's not met him for a while. So that's what she says to one police officer. She actually tells another police officer, I've never even heard of someone called Karan Kakkad. On April 7th, so Karan Kakkad actually goes missing in March. Around March 9, Karan Kakkad goes missing in 2012, and April 7 is when these people basically kill the Bollywood actor's father, Arun Tikku. And you wouldn't believe it, but the twists and turns in this case keep happening, okay? So once they actually end up arresting Vijay Palande on April 10th of 2012 in connection to the Tikku murder, the Bollywood actor's father, Vijay Palande in fact escapes the crime branch van and he runs away. He's on the run for full 24 hours before he's then captured by the police and they trace him to South Bombay. Thanks to the phone calls that he did make to his sister, they finally nab him after 24 hours near the Church Gate area in Bombay. So a day after he's arrested for the second time in connection to this case, on 13th of April, Vijay Palande finally admits that during his interrogation that he was the person who had in fact also killed Karan Kakkad. He also gives the crime branch police officers a description of where they can find parts of his body. Some of those body parts had already been found by that time. The police just had no idea who the body parts belonged to. They even trace that Simran Sood and Vijay Palande had in fact taken Karan Kakkad's credit cards and they had actually been on a shopping spree in Bangkok within that 1 month before they end up killing the father of the Bollywood actor. So within that 1 month, when they had killed one person and they hadn't killed the next one yet, in that time they're having a nice little shopping spree at the expense of the murder victim Karan Kakkad. So thanks to all this police work, there is a 1242 page charge sheet which was finally filed against Vijay Palande and Simran Sood. And Vijay Palande has been to the jail his fair share of times and he's been let out. But finally, Simran Sood is nabbed and she is in fact taken to the courts where 105 witnesses are presented by the prosecution in this case. And there's a wealth of forensic and medical evidence and financial evidence which truly proves that Simran Sood was a part of this crime syndicate as well. It was not just Vijay Palande. So she was in fact jailed in the year 2012 on the charges of the murder, being accomplice to this murder. Once she was of course arrested, Simran Sood filed several petitions for bail, as is her right, and but thankfully she was not given bail. Now imagine a woman who's made her life's mission to live a life of luxury. What would a person like that feel once they get into jail? We actually get a glimpse of that thanks to a journalist who was actually in jail at the same time, a woman journalist who was already in jail by the time Simran Sood comes into jail actually tells us a lot about, gives us many glimpses of Simran Sood's life inside the Byculla jail of Mumbai. And if you want to hear about the woman journalist and why she was put into jail, I've already covered that on the podcast in episode number 8. And I'll link all these episodes in the description box below, because the episode that I'm covering today is already episode 14 and 15, and the one that I just mentioned is episode number 8. So I'll link all three of them in the description. So in the book of that female journalist that I was telling you about, she says that the minute Simran Sood steps foot in the Byculla jail, she's put into a particular place which is meant for newcomers, and the entire jail is abuzz about this Bollywood actress who had come to jail. And then the journalist Jigna Vora actually ends up meeting Simran Sood, because Simran Sood makes a beeline for Jigna Vora. Jigna Vora, of course, the journalist, looked educated, and Simran Sood walks up to her and says, "Can you help me get the extensions out of my hair?" And the journalist Jigna Vora tells her, "I don't know anything about extensions. If you want to get them out, go to the African inmates and they would help you get all this out of your hair." Then she goes on to tell us that Simran Sood was not able to ingest the inedible food. Simran Sood was confronted with the heat and the stench of the Byculla jail, which the other inmates were very used to, but a woman like Simran Sood was, of course, not used to. And Simran Sood, the actor who was at this point in jail, goes on to tell Jigna Vora, the journalist, that her boyfriend, the famous stockbroker Gautam Vora, would come and meet her someday, and he never comes to meet her, of course. Simran Sood, of course, tries to get home cooked meals as well. However, she's actually denied that several times. She's at the mercy of all the other sort of thuggish women who are already there. And she tries to please these women so that she can live a life of some sort of luxury inside the jail. And she fondly tells all the women in jail how there was this one time when her boyfriend Gautam Vora at one point had chartered an entire yacht for her birthday, and now she was sitting in jail eating food that was completely inedible right next to a toilet which was full of stench. So what a lark, what a plunge had come into her life. So she was basically telling all the inmates about her homes in Bangkok, her shopping sprees in London, in Dubai, her plastic surgeries in the US. Anyway, so she spends a lot of time in the jail, but she's actually let out of jail after 12 years. As you can imagine, she was in jail from the year 2000, she was in jail from the year 2012, and on August 12th of 2022, Simran Sood was finally granted bail, and she actually spent less than 10 years in jail. And her attorney asked for a bail because she had already spent half of her sentence in jail. And under section 436A of the criminal procedure court, it says that if a prisoner had already spent some time under trial before their sentence was given to them, they can actually ask for reduced prison sentence. So Simran Sood, of course, is let out of prison in August of 2022 after she had served around 10 years in jail. Vijay Palande has time and time again, of course, asked for the same bail that Simran has been given. He has not been given that bail though. So when her attorney was actually asking for a bail, he said basically that she had spent almost 10 years in jail. The maximum sentence given by the Indian court under section 436A of the criminal procedure is actually 20 years. She had already spent 10 years in jail. So this was an under trial prisoner, and she cannot be detained for something longer than that. And during the hearing, the judge said, quote, long incarceration of the applicant for a decade, with the conclusion of the trial not being in sight, since 34 or more of the witnesses are yet to be examined, the applicant deserves a release in jail. So Simran's been out for a really long time. She's been out on bail, to my knowledge, as of January of 2025. So that brings us to the end of the narrative telling of the story. Now let's try to criminologically try to analyze why people like Vijay Palande and people like Simran Sood, her real name is Simran Surinder Kumar Dusange. Why do these kind of people do what they do? Let's try to understand that. And the way to criminologically understand this would be to apply a few theories to it. One of the theories which definitely applies here is rational choice theory. Now, rational choice theory basically says that inside the mind of any kind of criminal, before they do any kind of crime, whether this happens subconsciously or consciously, everyone weighs the pros and cons of committing a particular crime. A person who basically commits any kind of crime believes that the reward will somehow outweigh the punishment that they're going to get from it. In this particular case, as you know, time and time again, Vijay was basically running away from the clutches of the police. He was a criminal who had done this time and time again. He started out as a person working for the Dawn, Santosh Shetty. He was maybe a small time minion for the Dawn, but nonetheless, several of these kinds of financial fraud based crimes that he had done. And Simran seems to have found the perfect partner for her, because at the cost of the lives of other people, as long as these two people were living a life of luxury, they didn't really care about anyone else. So truly, this is one of those best cases which truly explains rational choice theory. Now, another one that we can definitely apply here, applies in so many different cases, is Robert Merton's strain theory. Now, the core idea of this theory is something like this: it says that people turn to a life of crime when they lack legitimate means of achieving success. Um, in the case of Vijay Palande, we can definitely see that he came from a small part of Maharashtra. He came to Mumbai. He was working as a waiter. He had graduated in with a degree of in hospitality and management. He was taking small, strident steps towards some sort of success in life. However, the kind of people who would walk into his restaurant as his patrons were exceptionally rich, very successful, and he wanted to become like them. And there would be no legitimate way in which somebody like a waiter would probably get all this kind of overnight success unless he would begin to con people. And that's what he began to do once he found Simran Sood to be the right person for him to basically trap these people in a honey trap, right? So this is the only way in which the two of these people thought that they could achieve success. Now, I don't think anyone would agree that Simran had no other chance in life. We know that both her parents were scholarly professors. She grew up in a middle class family in a safe neighborhood in Ludhiana, Punjab. She had another sister and a brother. So, in that sense, sort of like the perfect middle class family, she was given all these opportunities. She did attend a good school. She actually attended the university in Punjab as well. So, in that sense, she was brought up with all these opportunities to gain success in legitimate ways. However, she refused to do that. So, I think in the mind of these people, they think that as long as we can exploit someone else to get wealth and status quickly, the end would then sort of justify the means for these people. So these kind of scammers do that all the time. All sorts of scammers, all sorts of, MLMs, multi level marketing kind of companies, they also basically sell the same idea to everyone. Another thing that definitely applies here is social learning theory, and definitely applies in the case of Vijay Palande. In social learning theory, which is the theory by Bandura and Sutherland, they say that criminal behavior is learned by observing and imitating people around us. And once crime is normalized in any milieu, In once you're raised in that kind of environment where scamming people, being a con artist, conning people out of money is perfectly acceptable. As a matter of fact, you're the smart one for doing that. They're the idiots because they got conned. If you're brought up in an environment like that, if you're surrounded by people who do that, you're definitely more likely than not to do exactly the same thing. And thanks to the policing in our country and the slow judicial system, these people never really face consequences for their actions. So why wouldn't they do it, right? Of course, this is the part where the criminological theory sort of blends into psychological theory as well. I think anyone hearing this can definitely tell that these people seem to have some sort of like sociopathic tendencies as well. They are out to manipulate and exploit others. They hardly feel any remorse about this. They exploit others to maximize their profit. So that's really, this truly is the best example of someone who is basically a sociopath, who thinks that this is the rational choice, the rational thing for them to do, and this is the only way they can achieve success. And they're learning this in their milieu, and they just practice that thing time and time again. And unless they are checked the first time they do it, they will continue to do this forever and perpetrate such type of crimes forever. Anyway, so that's the criminological analysis of this case. Legally, I did tell you that Simran Sood was able to get a bail because she was under trial for 10 years. The case has not been resolved. So, after 10 years, she did secure that bail based on those reasons. Vijay Palande is actually, in fact, still in jail. And Simran Sood, as of now, I tried looking her up on the internet. I couldn't find any trace of her, and rightly so. She should be laying low after committing such crimes. Anyway, that brings us to the end of this particular case. Let me know what your thoughts are. What did you think about these honey trap murders? Share your thoughts with me about this case or any other case. Feel free to comment. We have about 24 videos on this YouTube channel already. There are about 31 episodes of the podcast available. And as I always tell you, uh, the videos are actually not identical to the podcast. Both we put so much effort in and they were completely different. So let us know your thoughts about this particular case. And until I see you again, stay collectively vigilant.